My Weird School Special, Book number 8. We're red, weird, and blue. What can we do? By Dan Gutman. Pictures by Jim Pelot. Chapter 4. A Piece of Cake. The next morning, we were in Mr. Cooper's class. Turn to page 23 in your math books, he said. That's when an announcement came over the loudspeaker. Will the third grade please report the all-purpose room? Not again, groaned Mr. Cooper. Okay, everybody Pringle up. We all lined up like Pringles and walked 1,100,000 miles to the all-purpose room, which should really have a different name because there are no dolphins in there. Our principal, Mr. Klutz, was waiting for us. He has no hair at all. I mean, none. He must save a lot of money on haircuts and shampoo. He told us all to climb up on the stage. I'm so excited, Mr. Klutz said. It's time to choose which of you will represent elementary school in the President's Day Challenge. Are you kids pumped? Yes, shouted all the girls. No, shouted all the boys. I'm going to ask you questions about the presidents, Mr. Klutz explained. Blah, 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 blah. Whoever gets the most right will compete against Dirk School next week, blah, 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 blah. Annoying Andrea was sitting in front of me. I heard her whisper to Emily. I'm in the gifted and talented program, Andrea whispered. This is going to be a piece of cake. What does cake have to do with anything? Andrea got the first question, of course. Which president said it is easier to do a job right than to explain why you didn't? Asked Mr. Klutz. I had no idea. The answer is Martin Van Buren, Andrea said. He was the 8th president of the United States. That's right, said Mr. Klutz. Very good, Andrea. I can see you've been studying. Andrea smiled the smile she smiles to let everybody know she knows something nobody else knows. What is her problem? Okay, AJ, it's your turn, said Mr. Klutz. This is a tough one. Who was president when the first flush toilet was installed in the White House? I knew that. Millard Fillmore, I shouted. That's right, said Mr. Klutz. Very good, AJ. I see you've been studying too. I stuck my tongue out at Andrea. Next it was Ryan's turn. Who was the third president of the United States? Asked Mr. Klutz. John Adams, guessed Ryan. Incorrect, said Mr. Klutz. Sorry, Ryan. Adams was the second president. The third president was Thomas Jefferson. Nice try, though. Ryan walked off the stage and took a seat in the front row. Next, it was Michael's turn. Who was president when the Civil War started? Asked Mr. Klutz. Andrew Jackson, guessed Michael. No, that's not it, said Mr. Klutz. Sorry, Michael. The correct answer is Abraham Lincoln. Michael walked off the stage. It was Neil's turn. Which president said, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself? Asked Mr. Klutz. John F. Kennedy? Guessed Neil. Nice try, but no, said Mr. Klutz. Sorry, Neil. The correct answer is Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Neil walked off the stage. It was Emily's turn. Emily, what does LBJ stand for? Lyndon Bobby Johnson? Guessed Emily. Close, said Mr. Klutz. Sorry, Emily. The correct answer is Lyndon Baines Johnson. Emily walked off the stage. It was Alexia's turn. 7 of our first 12 presidents were born in what state? Asked Mr. Klutz. Massachusetts? Guessed Alexia. Nope, said Mr. Klutz. Sorry, Alexia. The correct answer is Virginia. Alexia walked off the stage. One by one, everybody was getting eliminated. Finally, it was just me and Andrea on the stage. Okay, now it's down to 2 students, said Mr. Klutz. I looked at Andrea. She stuck her tongue out at me. I stuck my tongue out at her. When you don't like somebody, you should always stick your tongue out at them. Nobody knows why, but it's the first rule of being a kid. Andrea, asked Mr. Klutz, what was George Washington's wife's name? Martha, Andrea replied right away. That's right, said Mr. Klutz. AJ, which president once threw up on a foreign dignitary? George H.W. Bush, I shouted. That's right, said Mr. Klutz. And for a bonus point, who did he throw up on? The Prime Minister of Japan, I shouted. Very good, AJ, said Mr. Klutz. I stuck my tongue out at Andrea again. As long as Mr. Klutz kept asking questions about toilets and presidents who threw up on people, I would be fine. Andrea, said Mr. Klutz, which president's first name at birth was Leslie? Wow, these questions were tough. Gerald Ford, Andrea shouted. Right, said Mr. Klutz. It's going to be hard to choose between you two. AJ, who was the president from 1929 to 1933? Uh-oh, I didn't know that one. I was going to lose. Andrea would be competing against Dirk School in the President's Day Challenge, and she would be going to Disneyland. I tried to think of who was the president from 1929 to 1933. In the front row, Michael caught my eye. He was making weird hand motions. It almost looked like he was vacuuming a floor. That was weird. Michael, what are you doing? Asked Mr. Klutz. I'm, pretending to use a vacuum cleaner, Michael replied. Vacuum cleaner? Hoover, I shouted. The correct answer is Hoover. That's right, said Mr. Klutz. Very good, AJ. Andrea, which president has the same first name as a character on Sesame Street? Grover Cleveland, shouted Andrea. Right, said Mr. Klutz. AJ, who was the 4th president? I had no idea. This was it. I was finished. In the front row, Ryan was making hand motions. He looked like he was arguing with somebody. Ryan, what are you doing? Asked Mr. Klutz. Nothing, Ryan replied. I'm just pretending to be a guy who's mad at his son. Mad at his son? Madison, I shouted. The correct answer is Madison. That's right, said Mr. Klutz. Very good, AJ. That's not fair, Andrea shouted. Arlo's friends are feeding him the answers. He's cheating. I am not, I shouted. R2, shouted Andrea. R2D2, I shouted. We went back and forth like that for a while. Mr. Klutz had to make the shut up peace sign with his fingers to calm everybody down. I can select 2 3rd graders, he said. I think it's obvious which of our students know the most about the presidents. Andrea and AJ will both represent our school at the President's Day Challenge. Everybody clapped their hands in a circle to give us a round of applause. Ooh, said Ryan. AJ and Andrea will be in the President's Day Challenge together. They must be in love. When are you gonna get married? Asked Michael. If those guys weren't my best friends, I would hate them. Chapter 5. I Quit. So Andrea and I would be representing our school. Ugh, I didn't want to do it. I might actually have to learn something about the presidents. What a waste. The more time you spend learning stuff, the less time you have to spend on important stuff, like watching TV and playing video games. But everybody at school was really getting into it. All the kids wanted to see us beat those dark school dorks again. All the teachers were feeding Andrea and me facts about the presidents to help us get ready. When we went to the media center, Mrs. Rupee showed us more books and videos about the presidents. During computer class, our computer teacher, Mrs. Yonkers, told us that Bill Clinton was the first president to use email. During music class, our music teacher, Mr. Loring, told us that Bill Clinton also played the saxophone on TV. During phys ed, our gym teacher, Miss Small, told us that Gerald Ford was a star football player when he was in college at the University of Michigan. All the grown-ups at school kept pulling Andrea and me aside in the hallway to teach us facts they knew about the presidents. Our security guard officer Spence told me about how the Secret Service protects the president. He said you never know what questions might be asked at the President's Day Challenge. Even Coach Hyatt, my Pee-wee football coach, wanted to help. AJ, she shouted to me at the end of practice on Saturday. I want you and Andrea to pick up my car. What? I replied. How would picking up your car help us win the President's Day Challenge? Pick it up, she shouted back. Show us how tough you are. If you can pick up a car, you can do anything. That was weird. Coach Hyatt is a riot. Finally, it was President's Day. We had that day off from school, and the President's Day Challenge would be on Wednesday night. On Tuesday morning, we were in Mr. Cooper's class when an announcement came over the loudspeaker. Andrea and AJ, please report to Mr. Klutz's office. Uh-oh. Ooh, said Ryan. AJ and Andrea are going to Mr. Klutz's office together. They must be in love. When are you gonna get married? Asked Michael. Andrea and I walked 1,100,000 miles to Mr. Klutz's office. When we got there, he was hanging upside down from the ceiling. Why are you hanging upside down from the ceiling? Andrea asked. It helps me think, Mr. Klutz replied. Your brain works better after the blood has rushed to your head. You should try it. Mr. Klutz is nuts. He climbed down and sat behind his desk. Did we do something wrong? I asked. Usually I get called to the principal's office when I did something wrong. No, Mr. Klutz replied. Just the opposite. I'm so proud of you two. Win or lose, you'll be representing our school. You're going to be under a lot of pressure tomorrow night. The questions will be harder. There may be some trick questions too. I know you're both going to give it your best shot. I looked at Andrea. She had on her mean face. What's the matter, Andrea? Asked Mr. Klutz. Arlo doesn't know anything about the presidents, she complained. He's not prepared and he's not even trying. I know lots of stuff about the presidents, I said. Oh yeah, Andrea said. You know which president put a toilet in the White House. You know which president threw up on somebody. But that's all you know. Arlo is going to bring our team down, Mr. Klutz. Hey, I didn't want to do this in the first place, I shouted. I don't want everybody to think I'm some kind of brainiac like you. All my friends are making fun of me. You know what? I quit. Do it yourself. I went to open the door, but Mr. Klutz stood up and blocked me. He came and put his arms around me and Andrea. "Look," he said gently, "you two kids have known each other for a long time. You were chosen to represent elementary school because you're really smart. You're both in the gifted and talented program. I need you to put aside your differences and work together as a team for the good of the school. Can you do that for one night?" "Okay," Andrea and I replied softly. We walked 1,100,000 miles back to our classroom without saying anything. But Andrea seemed to cheer up just as we got to the door. "I have an idea, Arlo," she said excitedly. "Why don't you come over to my house after school today? We can be study buddies." Study buddies? I didn't want to be Andrea's study buddy. I just hoped my friends didn't hear her say that as we walked into the classroom. "Ooh," said Ryan. "AJ and Andrea are going to be study buddies. They must be in love." "When are you gonna get married?" asked Michael. Chapter 6. The President's Day Challenge. Finally, it was the big night. My mom made me get all dressed up in a jacket and tie. "Ugh, you look so handsome," she told me. I felt like I was going to a funeral, my own. As we drove to school, I started thinking, I don't know anything about the presidents. Why do I have to represent the school? When we got to the all-purpose room, the place was packed. All my friends and classmates were there, along with lots of kids and parents from Dirk School. Some of the kids were holding signs. Some were chanting, "Dirk, Dirk, Dirk." There was electricity in the air. Well, not really. If there was electricity in the air, all of us would have been electrocuted. But everybody who was anybody was there. Dr. Carbles, the president of the Board of Education, was in the front row. So was Peter Porky, the owner of Porky's Pork Sausages. He was sitting between Mayor Hubble and Mr. Wilson, the principal of Dirk School. Even Elementary, the old lady our school was named after, was there. My parents wished me good luck and took the only seats that were left, in the back of the room. I walked down the middle aisle to get to the front. Lots of people took pictures and held out their hands for me to slap. "We're counting on you, AJ. Don't let us down, AJ. No pressure, AJ. If we lose, it will be all your fault, AJ. Just have fun, AJ. You'd better win, AJ." I took a seat next to Andrea in the front row. "It's about time you showed up, Arlo," Andrea whispered. "I thought you were going to chicken out." "No way," I replied. "I'm in it to win it." Mr. Peter Porky of Porky's Pork Sausages climbed up on the stage. Everybody clapped. "Welcome, boys and girls, parents, teachers, and all our guests," said Mr. Porky. "I will be the moderator of tonight's President's Day Challenge and blah, 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 blah." He went on for 1,100,000 minutes. Mostly, he talked about Porky's Pork Sausages. "And now I'd like to introduce the home team," Mr. Porky said. "From elementary school, 2 third graders in the gifted and talented program, AJ and Andrea." "Elementary, elementary, elementary," our classmates chanted as we climbed on the stage and took seats at one of the 2 tables up there. "Dirk, Dirk, Dirk," chanted the Dirk kids. "And from the visiting team at Dirk School," said Mr. Porky, "I'd like to introduce 2 exceptional 3rd graders, Tommy and Morgan." "Oh no, not Morgan Brocklebank," She's the star of the Dark School TV station. We competed against her in the brain games. She is annoying. Morgan and Tommy climbed up on stage and took seats at the table next to us. The whole audience stood up and gave us a round of applause. Well, 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 Morgan Brocklebank said to me while everybody was clapping. We meet again. Are you two ready to lose? Your face is gonna lose, I said, pointing my finger at her. Oh yeah? Morgan Brocklebank replied. I don't think so. Tommy and I went to Washington to do research on the presidents. We know everything. I hope you two will have something to do while we're having fun at Disneyland. You're going to Loserland, I told her. Meanwhile, that kid Tommy just sat there, picking his nose. We're going to crush you, said Morgan Brocklebank. This is going to be a cakewalk. What did cake have to do with it? Why is everybody always talking about cake? Finally, the audience sat down in their seats. It was time to start the President's Day Challenge. I was nervous. Suddenly, I felt my mind going blank. I forgot everything I learned over the last week. Who was the first president? I couldn't remember his name. I only remembered that it had something to do with laundry. George Detergenton? I was all sweaty. I thought I was gonna die.